You tired of making dip nail mistakes? Well, I have 30 simple tips that will change your dip game. Hi, my name is Tia, and I'm the owner of Nail Dip Studio, an online nail dip boutique. Check us out. So, tip number one, the soak off method. There's several methods out there, but I prefer using the double bowl method. The double bowl method is where you take two bowls. One will contain either a paper towel or an abrasive pad with some acetone, and the second will have some warm water. And the warm water will basically be the base. You place the second bowl into that one with the acetone, and it's going to warm it up and help ease off the soak off process. Tip number two is making sure you're using pure acetone and or a specially formulated soak off product that will help aid in taking off your dip products or acrylic products. The third tip that I can offer you would be making sure that the alcohol that you're using is at least 70% or higher. And the reason for that, especially if you're doing your nails, is that you just want to make sure that you're removing all of the dirt and debris and sanitizing your hands. And I find that, sometimes if you're using a lower grade alcohol, you don't really get good sanitation. Tip number four would be making sure that you have product pumps, more so than like the actual container. A product pump is going to allow you that accessibility that you need in order to get that alcohol, that acetone, or any other products out. So you can find those at the dollar store. Tip number five would be making sure that you're cleaning up your side walls and your cuticle area. And you don't have to be, overly aggressive, but you should make sure that you start out with a smooth surface, because what happens is this: if your cuticle and side walls have that film, that sort of white film that you see, it's not going to be able to create the seal that you need. And probably within a day or two, your nails are going to start to lift. So you want to make sure you sort of smooth and remove the cuticle areas. Tip number six is smoothing out any hard skin, any calluses that you may have. And as you can see right here on my right hand, and that's my pointer finger, I actually have a small callousy area right there that I'm going to buff out. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that later on in the video, but you want to make sure that you smooth all of that out. Okay. Tip number seven would be using a cuticle softener and using certain cuticle tools. And you want to make sure that you're using a softener based on your hand, based on, the texture. I would say the way that, if you're sensitive to certain products, you need to find a cuticle softener that works for you. And in the event that you can't find one, just use some soap and water and keep your hands submerged in that soap and water for at least 5 minutes to really soften the skin so that you can actually start the cleanup process. Okay? Tip number 8 would be cleaning up the cuticle area. And what you see me doing here is just taking a dual-ended cuticle tool. The end that I'm using currently is the pusher, and then the other end is the actual scraper, and that helps to really lift up a lot of that product that you see in and around your cuticle area and your side walls. And if you notice, the more and more I use the product, the cuticle softener that is, you see it starting to foam up and starting to really break down that area for me. And I personally like this cuticle softener because it does do, I would say, probably 50% of the work for me. So yeah, this is one of those products that I actually fell in love with, and you can actually get it from like an Ulta and from either definitely Ulta. It may be at Walmart or Target, but I need to see and check for you. So now I'm using the other end. Remember I said that I'm using a dual-ended cuticle tool. Well, this is the scraper. And this would be tip number 9. It's just really removing the film. And you don't want to apply a lot of pressure. I see people that they're overly aggressive with their cuticle, and you can tell because they've either cut too much in and around, or they've really cut into the cuticle, or behind the cuticle, if you will, into the lateral fold, and or they have that swelling that is in that area. And so you just really want to be delicate. And as you can see, I'm just scraping, and I'm not using a lot of force. Whatever's coming up comes up, but I'm just trying to make sure that I get and remove everything that I can see with this particular tool. Okay, going back in with the pusher, and again, you can use the ends interchangeably, but make sure that you're using them. Now I'm going to go get the infamous nail nipper. So one tip that I would say to you is that I prefer purchasing nail nippers that actually have a cap for the blade. And the reason that's important is because it's going to make sure that your tool remains sharp. If you have a dull nipper, you're going to create more harm than good. It's not going to cut effectively, it's not going to trim effectively, and you're going to be creating just an onset of problems. So make sure you try to get a nipper that actually has a cap to it. It will pay off in the long run. Also, don't overcut. I don't cut into my skin. I'm only looking at any loose areas, any areas that I know that potentially are sort of hangnails. I can sort of feel that that sort of surface is a little abrasive. It's not soft. It's a little rough. I go in and I trim that away just so I can remove it, so that I don't have to see it, or I don't give it time to fester and grow. Okay. The next tip that I have for you would be, if you're afraid of using a nipper, and I get it, some people are, tip number 11. Was that number 11? Maybe, I think. Yes. Using your nail buffer to buff out your sidewalls and any additional residue that you may have from the product off of your nails. And I find that this does give you a really nice and smooth surface if you want to avoid using the nipper. So this is just an option for those that, sort of want to have a different just like a different option. You can also use your buffer, and it'll give you the same results. I find that some days I don't feel like using the nipper, especially if I'm in a rush, or if I'm soaking off what I've already, let's say I did a dry manicure on Sunday, and I'm soaking my nails off again on Tuesday. Well, I don't need to go in and do all of that work all over again, because I've already done it. But you can definitely use your buffer and see how it smooths out the surface. For me, I always like to just go over my work, just to make sure that the area is really to my liking and to my standards. And so, again, find your pace, find your rhythm, take your time. You're doing your nails yourself. You don't have to rush this. Give yourself ample enough time to do so, but just make sure that you're checking your own work. Tip number 12 would be perfecting the smile line and or shaping the cuticle area. And I like to do this with my e-file, just because it cleans up that area and it gives it more of a professional look, that sort of professional trim, almost like an edger, right? Like edging out your cuticle area and your sidewall. So that's what I basically did here. I'm not going in and I'm not too aggressive with it. I'm using a grit file that's about either 180, it might even be 200. So it's very soft, and it's not taking off a lot of, it's not hard on my skin or anything like that. As you can see, I'm buffing out those sort of callousy areas that I know that I have on the side. And so I wouldn't be able to do that. It would be too harsh if it was too abrasive. So look for the higher the number, the softer the grit. The lower the number, the rougher the grit is. Just a FYI. So as you can see here, I'm just going in and just shaping and carving that out, just really adding that professional touch to it. It's an extra step. I think it's worth it, but it's not mandatory, okay? Tip number 13 would be pre-shape your nails. This is, I think, not only a time saver, but it really helps to avoid lifting. Oftentimes we have lifting because we've taken off too much of the product, and we've done that because we did not pre-shape our nails. We just went straight in, started dipping, and now you have to shape your nails on the back end. Well, you're going to take off a lot of product on the back end, and that's going to cause lifting, it's going to cause cracking, it's going to cause a lot of different things because you didn't pre-shape your nails. So make sure you're pre-shaping your nails to your desired shape prior to your application. Again, this is just going to help in the long run. Tip number 14 for me would be dehydrating your nails. And what I mean by that is this. I like to do a two-step process. I like to take alcohol, wiping it over my natural nails to dehydrate the nails, and then I apply my primer. And again, that's just a tip that I love to do for my nails. This is also too an opportunity when I use the alcohol to wipe my nails off, just to make sure that I don't need to go over anything before I start the application. It's nothing worse than getting into your application and noticing that, oh, I didn't remove this or I didn't remove that. You were rushing through. See, as you can see right here, the nail is now all clean, it's smooth, and it's ready for the actual dip application. So just make sure that you use a little alcohol and a lint-free cloth to do a once over, wipe everything down, start the dehydration process, and just really make sure that you've cleaned your nail up to your specific liking. The next tip that I have for you would be applying the primer. Now, my liquid dip sets come with a nail primer. That's step number 1, but some systems, they don't have that. So if you don't have a primer that you have of choice, or one that you prefer over the one that came with the system, just use the alcohol and another pad and wipe your nails off again. Tip number 16, for those of you who are applying tips to your natural nails before you start your dip application, I like to take my e-file and just buff out the inside just to add some texture so that I can start that process. Tip number 17 for me would be taking the tip and using step number 2, which is the base coat, and or using some nail glue to help adhere the tip to your natural nail. You want to make sure that you apply enough product, enough glue to really create a nice seal. And then you also want to make sure that you're using the right nail for the shape of your hand. For the shape of your nail. And as you can see right here, I prefer using clear tips that actually have a little hood in the back. It works out really nice. Apply a little pressure when you are applying your tip. So I use either my hand, or if you want to step your game up a little bit, you can actually get some tip nail clips that you can actually clip onto your nails, and this will really add some extra security. It doesn't hurt, but it just basically, this is the clip right here. It just adds a little bit of pressure and helps to secure the nail, to make sure that the nail is on very tight and that, it's sealed nice and properly. So you can get these off of Amazon if you're interested, and I'll leave a link down below. Tip number 19, and I think I would say probably one of the biggest tips, is really building your apex. And that's basically just creating that curve if you don't already have a natural curve to your nails. So some people have extremely flat nails, they have concave nails. And in other cases, some people, like myself, we have a slight curve, but it's not that pronounced. It's not that major, it's not a high apex that, I think that gives my nails that little oomph to it. So I'm going to show you how you can actually start to build your apex using the clear dip powder. And you only want to use the liquid system and apply that powder to the midpoint of your nail. And then you want to start doing your dip application. And what that's going to do is, with that half a dip that I'm going to show you, that half a dip will start that step, start creating that curvature that you want on your nails. So that process to me is a step that I never miss. And again, I have a slight curve in my nail, but it's not where I like it. So I over exaggerate my apex just to give me the height that I'm looking for. Now, what we're going to do right now, I want to apply a thin layer of the base coat, and that's step number 2. And as you can see, I'm only applying it in that center section. I avoided the side walls because I'm not trying to flood that area, and I'm dipping my finger in the powder, the clear powder, at an angle, giving it some time to really absorb all of that base coat. Then I'm tapping off any extra powder back into the container. I'm going to show you here how I didn't apply the powder on the sides, and as you can see, I'm raising that center section, raising that apex just by doing that one little step. And if you think about it, that little half a step, it's almost like if you put like a rock under some sand and then you put the sand around it, it'll start to get higher and higher. That's basically what you're doing there. So dusting off the powder once you dip your nails into any dip powder system is very important. And the brush you choose is also important because you don't want to choose a brush that's too abrasive. You don't want to have too much powder sitting on your fingers. Step number 22 would be really stirring up the powder and breaking it down. So basically either stirring or shaking the powder up so that you can loosen up the powder. Sometimes depending on where you're living and where you're storing your products, it can get, they can get stuck together. Some clumps could happen depending on where you're storing it. So you want to make sure that you stir it up. Now, tip number 22 is applying thin layers. You want to make sure that you are applying very, very thin layers to not only your nails, but when you are applying the powder. And the reason for that is that you don't want the bulk. Many of you struggle with dip powder because you're putting on too much product. You're dipping your nails into the powder. You're creating additional clumps and or waves. And later on in the video, I'll show you how to correct that. And that shouldn't be the case. What you don't realize, or maybe you do, is that every time a nail product, sort of like in this polished bottle here, it has product on the stem. That top coat is on that stem, and that stem, once it comes out of that container, that product is going to drip down. It's going to reapply itself to the brush. So as I'm wiping off the product, I'm doing that specifically because I know that I have additional product up there on that stem that's going to come down and saturate those bristles. And so I don't want to have a lot of product because now I'm oversaturating the brush. And if I oversaturate the brush, that means that I'm going to have just a horrible experience. The powder is going to get clumpy because I'm going to be putting clumps into the powder because I use too much of the adhesive. Number 2, the adhesive is not going to properly set the way that it should set because I have too much product on my nail. So therefore, I'm now sitting here with lumps and clumps, or when I go to file or dust off the powder, it's starting to crumble up and make these little, that like worn cotton sweater look. And so you want to make sure that you're always using thin layers, and that you're dipping your nails into the actual powder at an angle. That's also important for you to do. And as you saw there, I dipped my finger into the powder. I let my finger sit in the powder for, I would say, maybe 10 seconds or so, just so that I can actually make sure that that particular powder there on my nail is adhering. Okay, I avoided the side walls. I'm not trying to flood the side walls, and I'm also not trying to flood my cuticle area. I'm really just trying to build up the product and build up my layers. Again, another tip would be making sure that you are tilting your product, your powder with your hand. As you can see here, I just slightly tilted the powder, the container, and I'm inserting my finger in at an angle. This is going to help reduce the amount of waves or ripples that you're creating. So again, I just wanted to point that out. If you're having a difficult time angling your finger, then tip the container and allow the container to do the work for you versus you doing the work with your finger. Hopefully that makes sense. Now let me zoom in real quick, and I want to show you how I didn't add any product or any liquid or any powder to the side walls, and I'm pointing that out to you right now. And the reason for that is because if you are someone who has wide nails, this is a tip for you, and I'm specifically talking to you. If you want to create the illusion of having a thinner, narrow nail plate, you don't want to over accentuate the side walls. So I like a thinner look. So this is why I don't put product the first two dip layers. I am missing those side walls because again, I don't want the width. I don't want it looking wide. If that's your thing, then by all means you can do so. But for me, I prefer a narrow, thinner look. And I don't like having all of that product on the side, making my nails look really chiclet-y, like chiclets. Like just, no, that's not my vibe. That's not my thing. So I can't do it. But if that's what you like, hats off to you. So now that we're moving on to the next layer, okay, I want you to see how I'm being very careful, taking my time, going around the cuticle area, going around the side walls. Now I'm starting to add product to those areas because I'm ready to add. I don't want to make it too wide. I want to make sure that there is still strength there, but I don't want to make it too wide. And so this is why I do things in stages. So again, find the stage, find the application that works best for your hand, that works best for your technique. And if you find that, stick with that. That's okay. There's no specific rule in dip. There are different ways to apply. There are different ways to apply powder, and you can apply powder with gel, you can apply it with monomer, you can apply it with a liquid set. So it's different techniques and different ways, but you need to find a technique that really works best for you. And again, I go for the narrow, thin yet strong look. And I know it may come off as, well, that's like an oxymoron, but it really isn't. I like to build up in the center, creating the strength there, and not necessarily creating strength on the sides because I don't necessarily need that. But again, this is just a glimpse into the way that I really do my nails. And I wanted to take my time and give you a detailed tutorial and just, again, showing you 30 different little tips that I find that can really change the way that your overlay looks, especially if you're going for the more professional look, which I think we're all going for when we're doing our nails at home. So again, then layers, and the other element there too is apply enough layers based off of your lifestyle. Add as many layers as you need for the activities that you're in. So for instance, if I know I use my hands a lot, which I do, I typically go for a 5-layer application. And then some people may cringe at that, but understand, I still have to shape my nails on the back end. So if I have to shape my nails on the back end, that means that I'm buffing and filing off layers. And I could file off anywhere between a layer and a half. So that 5 layers or 5.5 layers, once I file it down, really gives me a solid 4. And what I'm showing you right here is that my nail, it isn't hard, it's still flexible, there's still some bendability there. And I want to make sure that, again, for me, because I tested that, I was like, no, that's not strong enough. I'm going to add another layer. So if you want to add 6 layers, and that's fine, just file and buff your nails down so that you're getting the desired shape and the desired strength, hardness, thickness that you need for your lifestyle. Some people only put on 3 layers, and that's perfectly fine if you have a strong base. But if your base is a little thinner, it's not as strong, then you probably want to go up in your layers so that you can avoid the cracking. And as you can see, it's not thick. I don't have those sort of thick nails, but that's why you always want to sort of dip at an angle. And what I did here in this particular illustration that I'm showing you, or demonstration, sorry, is I'm showing how, if you're using and putting your finger into the powder at an angle, notice how smooth that is. You don't see those waves, you don't see those ripples, you're not creating that bulk. You don't see me having powder or product gathering in any one location and or the other. It doesn't mean that it's completely smooth, but it does mean that I don't have a lot of cleanup that I need to do on that nail. But again, as I stated, later on in the video, I'm going to purposely create those mistakes so that you can see how you can fix them, because it's not the end of the world. We all make mistakes, but I can show you how to fix them, and it will perfect your nail game, okay? Now remember, I just said add enough layers for your nails. And one of the things I like to do is I like to gently just pinch the free edge of my nails to see if I get any resistance or if it's still bendable. Again, that's just a little tip, but the reason I like to do that is because some shades are stronger than other shades, and that's just period. There's some, and it could be something to do with the pigment, the amount of pigments that they need to put in to sort of get that particular shade. But some pigments, some powders are stronger than others. And so with this particular shade, because it's a little lighter, I do need to add another layer on there. And so again, that's just a little quality assurance check that I do. I like to pinch it, and if it's too bendy, like it's really, really too bendy, I know that 3 days from now, if I really hit the right surface or graze the right surface with my nails, I'm going to have either a crack or cracking, and I'm trying to avoid that. So again, make sure you're just adding in the layers that you need for your nails. Again, you see how I just picked up the powder, I tilted it at an angle, and now I'm sliding my finger in. And I'm not creating those waves, I'm not creating those ripples. And I keep going over that because I know, and I've seen pictures of people who are using, other systems, or maybe they may even be using mine, but they're using it incorrectly. And I want to make sure that I show you the correct way of using it. And again, it's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It's literally just a different way of doing a manicure, making the manicure a little harder than what, just normal polish would do, or even gel polish would do. So that to me is one of the biggest things of just sharing and building this community here. I share my tips, I share my tricks. Someone who's been in the industry for 15 years now, just really focusing on doing their nails at home because I like doing my nails at home. The cost savings is amazing. This is just something that, I love to do and I love to share. So hopefully you all find these tips and tricks to your liking. But again, like I stated, I am just really making sure that I'm dusting off the powder and that I'm applying enough layers for me, what I like. I know my hand like the back of my hand. So I know 3 layers won't work. It's just not, I'm a break that in 2 days. So yeah. Now, once you're satisfied with the layers you've applied, I like to do a once over. And so right here, you can see it's smooth. It's smooth. It's not a lot of waves, but it's not the smoothest. Okay. I'm showing you that it's not the smoothest, but it's not the roughest either. It doesn't have that many mistakes. So if I wanted to, with this particular application, I could directly go into the clear coat layer, which is basically encapsulating the color. If you had like a shimmer or a glitter shade, you would want to make sure that you dip in the clear powder, probably I would say no less than twice if you have a shimmer shade, just to make sure that you are not overly saturated. That you're not disturbing the shimmers and fouling those off. Now, here's the gotcha. If you have texture on your dip nail before you apply the clear coat, tap your neighbor. Before you apply the clear coat, she said, smooth your nail out. If you have ever applied your nail, the clear coat, the clear dip powder on top of a color, and you have some texture, you can see that texture under that clear. So your nail may be, shaped the way that you want. It may be buffed and smooth, but you still see the unfinished surface underneath the clear. Especially for shades that are lighter, you can really see it, those imperfections. So what I like to do is using my nail file, the 180 side, I like to go in and just lightly buff out any imperfections before I apply that clear coat. And that's what you just saw me do. I buff before, I shape before, and I will dust off. And I really want to make sure that I dust off any of those particles off of my nail before I dip into the clear powder, because again, I'm trying to encapsulate, I'm trying to seal in the color, I'm trying to make sure that I'm that the product is going to adhere correctly and that I don't see all of those mishaps under the clear. And now I'm trapped with it because I can't take the clear off because the clear is now bonded to the actual color. So it's one. So just make sure that if you have a mistake like that, file it out. But that nail right there didn't have a lot of mistakes, but in the up and coming clips, I do have several. I purposely did my nails a lot rougher just to show you, especially if you're a beginner, how to fix those mistakes. Now that we have the desired layers that I want, I'm going to move into tip number 25, and that's applying the bond. In some cases, again, some systems may not have a bond to it, or you may not be applying that step, but it's necessary to do so because it's going to take a minute for this system to cure if you don't use an activator or a bond. You can see it's still somewhat bendable. See how I was able to sort of move it? It's resistant enough for the layers that I like to have, but I now need to cure it. I now need to make it hard. And so by adding the activator, by adding the bond to my nails, that's what's going to make this hard. and it's going to give me the strength that I'm looking for. And I really like to saturate it because I have a lot of layers. So I want to make sure that that activator is penetrating those grooves, those cracks, those crevices, to make sure that it's hardening. Now, let's move into fixing the mistakes. This is what this section is on. This section is solely on mistakes. And as you can see, all of the other nails outside of the one that I completed from start to finish have some type of ripple, wave, lump, bump, imperfection, and it happens. You put your nail in the powder, you may wiggle it around, somebody may come in, somebody may say something, boom, now you created this ripple. As soon as you pull your nail out of the powder, if you notice that you have a wave, take a finger from the other hand and basically just tap that powder down smooth. Okay, just tap it, press it lightly, and just tap it back into place. Very easy, very simple. If you can't do that, that's not an option for you. That's okay too. Leave the ripple, leave the wave, continue to build on top of it. But I will show you how to file things down because you're going to have a big ripple. So you're going to have to really file and really buff that down, that texture down to smooth out that surface so that your nails now have an even look and that the surface area is, I would say, more of a professional salon-esque finish. So you want to make sure that, when you're looking, if you have these ripples, see how I just stuck my finger in? So ripples come from different things. So applying too much product, you're going to get a ripple. See, I just pulled my finger out, took my pointer finger from the left hand, tap, 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 smooth that out. Now, tip 27. Let's smooth out these ripples. I purposely did ripples on each one of my fingers just so I can give you that look. Still using that 180 over 100 nail file, and I prefer using the 180 side. Why? Because it allows me to control how much product I'm removing. That 100 side is too abrasive, and if you're not a professional and you don't know sort of when to stop, you can overfile your dip nails, and by doing so, you're going to take off way too much powder. Okay, you want to make sure that you're smoothing your nails out, that you're somewhat shaping, because again, you don't want all that product on your side walls, you don't want all that product around your cuticle area. You're just smoothing out the extra product that's sitting on your finger that quite honestly you don't want, and you don't want to encapsulate under that clear, so that you can apply the clear coat. Without doing this step, your nails are going to forever look lumpy, and I don't care what you do to try to smooth that out, it's not going to smooth out. It won't. It's not. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. It's like taking an ice cube and putting, like a grain of rice in it, and then freezing it in the ice tray and then pulling it out. Short of you cracking it, breaking it, or melting it, you're not going to get to that grain of rice. It's encapsulated into that ice. Well, that's the same sort of analogy that I would use with regards to the powder. If you're not filing those ripples and those waves out and getting those lumps out, you're going to always see it. I don't care even if the surface is smooth, you're going to see the texture underneath. Take your time, use your 180 file, and gently start buffing and shaping and removing the product in those areas that have the lumps and the bumps. You can definitely do this before you apply your clear coat. I encourage you to do this. This is, I think, the biggest difference between, the salon home look and I did my nails at home. There, you get two different reactions when you don't clean up that area. Okay. And to me, it's worth it. So I use my 180 nail file. I use my nail buffer, and I go in and I dust everything. I refine everything. I make sure that the nails are nice and clean, that the surface is very smooth and ready for that encapsulation that I'm going to do with that clear coat. And yeah, that's just one of the things I love to do. Now, once you've buffed everything, you've smoothed out everything, you've made sure that the surface is basically what you want to see underneath that clear coat, I want you to make sure you dust everything off, underneath your nails, on top of your nails, around your nails, all of that, because you want to make sure that you don't have any extra filing debris on your fingers. Now you can go ahead and apply a thin layer of the base coat. That's step number 2. And you can dip your nails into the clear powder. And again, that's to encapsulate the shade and to keep the color its true original shade. But then also too, it adds another layer of protection to your nails. And so that's, again, one of the things that I love to do. If I have a mistake on my dip application, I will buff it out. I will file it out, make sure that it's done before I apply the clear coat. And I don't even apply the bond until after I've done the clear coat. And as you can see here, I'm grabbing step number 3, which is the bond, and I'm applying that to my nails. And this is what activates the base coat, which is step number 2, and the powder. And you want to make sure that you saturate those nails with that step. That is going to keep and make your nails, in my opinion, it gives me that hard overlay that I'm looking for without me feeling like it's heavy, if that makes sense. So again, right here, I'm just showing you the difference between the nail buffers and the nail files. Now, I don't use this black gray type of buffer. It's too abrasive. It's too hard. It is too hard. You're going to remove too much product. This is why you never see me use a buffer this size with that grit. It's just too hard. Also, too, I prefer to use a nail file that has a 180 grit or higher. And that's because I don't want to take off too much product. And if you're someone who's just, again, you're new to dip, you should definitely have a nail file that's of the 180 range or higher, because that's going to allow you to control the amount of product you file off, you buff off. And it gives you, it's a good, I think, grit to practice on. Again, as you start to, get more and more familiar, you enhance your technique. Yeah, you can use a different nail file. You can use a nail file that works best for you. But in the beginning, I would highly suggest that you use something that's a little softer and less aggressive and abrasive on your nails, because you don't want to cause any damage unnecessarily because you used a nail file that was just honestly too harsh for you to use. Okay. And as you can see, I'm really focusing on smoothing out my sidewall, smoothing out my nails, and creating that narrow look. And again, I purposely created those ripples. I purposely created those waves because I wanted to show you how to blend, how to smooth those out. Notice how I'm filing my nails in a downward motion towards the free edge, and that's because I don't want that free edge to be too bulky. But I'm paying close attention to not file down the apex that we work so hard to build up that curve, okay? And just to add a little professional oomph to my nails, I am using my e-file just to carve out my cuticle smile lines. But I'm not really doing any nail filing with that e-file. I'm just using this as a carver. It adds an extra element in my opinion, but you can also do the same thing on using a hand file. But, you know, again, if you're going to get that close to the cuticle line, you have to have something that's a little less abrasive because it will cut you and cause damage. So again, looking at the way that that smile line is now carved out, it's very clean. I'm just going to continue to move forward and buff everything out. I want to get it as smooth as possible. I don't want to see any lumps and bumps, and I'm definitely not looking to encapsulate any texture. Also, look at the way that I'm placing my finger, my thumb under my ring finger for support. I'm doing that specifically because I need that support. Utilize your other fingers to help offset and add aid to your filing technique. This is something that I've done for many, many years because, you know, I didn't have somebody holding my hand, and it gives you the range of motion where you can actually turn the finger this way to the left, to the right, up and down, but still have control. And you do that primarily because that thumb is the controller. So that's I thought a really good tip, and I didn't want to sort of pull that out of the clip, out of the video, because I think that somebody could use it. So utilize, sorry about that, my audio cut out, but use your fingers to help stabilize and support your other fingers as you're going through the filing process. It will definitely change the way that I think that your nails look because you're able to rotate and have better control. Now look at that. I also, at the end of the filing process, before I even add any of the top coat, I like to wipe and dust off my nails just to make sure that I got all those spots. And I do that by just taking a cotton swab, a little alcohol alcohol and spraying that down on my finger just to make sure that they are shaped and buff. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a side-by-side comparison so that you can see the difference between a smooth nail and an unsmooth nail, or a non-buff smooth nail. You see how you can see the ripples on the right side versus the smoothness of the nail on the left side. So that's, again, one of those reasons why I like to go in and just buff everything out. Now that everything has been buffed out, now that, you know, I have the shape and the ripples are gone, you applied your clear coat, you shaped and filed everything, I want you, before you even get up to go and wash your hands with soap and water, I want you to wipe your hands off with a lint-free alcohol pad and then go and wash your hands, because again, this is going to show you any areas that you may have missed in the process of doing your nails, and you want to make sure that you can actually see them. So now that you've washed your hands and everything is all, you know, clean and done, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with step number 4. But here's another thing. Make sure that your surface area that you're working on is completely dust free. Take the time to take a paper towel, use the towel that you use to dry off your hands, and just remove any dust, remove any debris, because again, you're placing your hands on that surface so that you can allow your hands to dry. And sometimes particles will kick back onto your nails as you are applying that step number 4, which is the top coat layer. So as always, apply a thin layer and at least allow that layer, I would say the first layer, to dry for about 2 to 3 minutes before you add, well, no, I'm sorry. Apply the first layer and allow that layer to dry for about 2 minutes. Just so that it's tacky. You don't want it to get too dry, but you don't want it too dry, and that then you're sort of disturbing the drying process. Then add your second layer and just let your hands sit there and dry. Don't turn on a fan. Don't wave your hands in the air. Just keep your hands planted on that surface still. And I promise you, this will change the way you do your dip nails at home. I hope these tips have been helpful for some of you. I hope that you found value in the content that I put out there. And again, as always, thanks so much for watching. Again, this is Tia from Nail Dip Studio. If you're interested in any of the products that you've seen here today, head over to my online store, naildipstudio.com, and be sure to like this video and follow me on Instagram and on Facebook. But until next time, keep dipping. Thank you.